Lindsay Smith. I am with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. We are co-hosting this today with the Institute for Public Health Innovation, bringing 6 panelists to you who are working on different aspects of food recovery and food rescue in DC, Maryland, and Virginia in our Metropolitan Washington region. And I can tell you, we ran a similar panel like this last year with 3 of today's speakers. And the field has continued to grow since that time. So we're really excited for you to hear from some of the growing numbers of leaders in this space who are engaged in food rescue and food recovery. Their models are different. The motivations may be slightly different, and these are all stories and experiences that you're going to hear from them today. So if you haven't had a chance to, as you're joining, if you'd like to continue introducing yourselves in the chat, we welcome you to do that. And with that, I think I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to our first presenter, Aman Shergill, who is the Food Insecurity Initiatives Lead at the Guru Gobind Singh Foundation in Montgomery County. Aman, are you ready?
Absolutely. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you so much.
So firstly, I would like to thank you all for including us during the DMV Food Rescue Week here. I appreciate you having this space for us to share what we've been doing. So I'm here as a volunteer. I wear many different hats in the community since I moved to Montgomery County in 2015. Just to sort of, just to put it out there in terms of, some people may ask, what role does a faith-based organization play here during Food Rescue Week? So for those who may be wondering, yes, I was born and raised in London, and I was born into the Sikh faith. So our faith teaches us about equality, service, and justice for all. So with that, sharing a meal is a key component of our faith, which was started by Guru Nanak Dev Ji 500 years ago. And naturally, when everyone was closing their doors, be it to their small business, to their office, to schools, places of worship, but one door we were able to keep open was the door to our community kitchen here at Guru Gobind Singh Foundation, based in Rockville. So we have a licensed kitchen. So it's just a natural call for us to answer when county were reaching out to folks, when we kind of found food insecurity was a big issue during COVID to many. So we opened, we kept our doors open, and we started preparing about 50 to 80 meals for the local men's shelter. These are vegetarian meals prepared from scratch. Just to fast forward to where we are now, 18 months on, we can proudly say that we have freshly prepared from scratch over 250,000 of vegetarian meals for those in need. For those in need, translates to the local shelters, the men's shelters in Silver Spring, in Rockville. We also serve Interfaith Works. We serve Stepping Stones. We were serving Nourish Now when we first set out back in March 2019. We were preparing 600 meals 5 days a week and taking them to Nourish Now so they could further share them. So we continue to do so. We also share meals with So What Else, Small Things Matter, and many other organizations. The list goes on. So we've also been able to take freshly prepared meals with produce and non-perishables to families who are unable to reach us. We've had families who have either had COVID or they have elderly and they've not been able to leave their homes. So we've engaged over 350 volunteers from all backgrounds, young and old. Some people were initially a little bit hesitant in coming into a Sikh place of worship, thinking we may convert them, and believe you me, that is not the case. It's just been a wonderful time just to sort of have everyone come together and roll up their sleeves and say, okay, what can we do to help? So for me, this is not my day job, but I just kind of feel blessed to being able to come together with my good friends, be it in the school community or in the county itself, and have Guru Gobind Singh Foundation, which is my local place of worship, step up and allow us to use the space so we can continue to prepare these meals. Because the pandemic has really shone a light and it's magnified the food insecurity within our county. And I just, feel that with us all stepping up and, being there for one another has had a positive effect with those involved. So we continue to serve every Sunday. We have our grab and go. We're serving over 1,500 up to 2,000 meals every Sunday. We have around 50 to 60 volunteers inside and outside of the building. We have around 80 home deliveries, which is about 380 meals going out to families. Just to share the success, if you don't mind, the most recent message I had from one of our clients yesterday was to say that they have 2 critically ill children and disabled parent with other parent who recently broke his leg. With virtually all other food programs winding down or stopping service, this organization and this volunteer has provided many sources of food and the only source of milk. So we also have milk and bread available for those in need. This particular client, she's just so thankful and grateful. So that speaks volumes for what we are doing. It's challenging in terms of, keeping. For me personally, I would like to have this 24/7, but the challenge has been having people in the kitchen available Monday to Thursday. As the need is still greater, prior to COVID, as we can see. I see, Lindsay, I get my warning, but I'm not sure what else I should be covering, but I'm here and I'm grateful for this space and I can take questions via the chat. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Aman. And I do see that Kelvin has one for you in the chat. I'm wondering if Evelyn could advance your last slide to show some images of the work you're doing. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Evelyn. And Aman, Kelvin has a question about the size of your kitchen. If you wanted to respond to him, I think we may have had our second speaker get on successfully. Yes, yay. Welcome, Dr. Renaissance. Are you ready to offer your remarks?
Cami, just a quick question. The PowerPoint, am I pulling that through or will you advance it for me?
Evelyn will advance it for you. And if you just wouldn't mind just telling her verbally when to do that, that would help us greatly.
Yeah. Yep.
Everyone, again, thank you. I know we've had people joining and we just heard from our first speaker, Aman Shirgil. I am going to put the link to our speakers' bios in the chat again. But with that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Renaissance from One More Plate, DC.
Hello. Thank you for the introduction, Lindsay, and the opportunity to be here, Kate. As said before, I'm Dr. Renaissance. I'm the founder and executive director of One More Plate. And I'll tell you just a little bit about what we do and how we do it right now. So if I can have the second slide, please. So what is One More Plate, Inc.? We are our 501c3 nonprofit that really functions in 3 ways. The intake of food and then the production and distribution of food to our hungry neighbors. Why do we do this? It's really that goal is to reestablish value in everyone. And I'll explain that to mean a lot of us, especially after a hard day's work, we're feeling productive, we're feeling good about ourselves, but naturally our unsheltered and even sheltered neighbors are not working. And so that idea that productivity equals value, we want to disestablish that and say that just by being present, by being born, by breathing, you have value. And so we want to, you can hit that last one right here, by accomplish this goal. So we intend to meet the most basic needs of humanity for survival, eating, in a way that also demonstrates value of the person that we're giving it to. So the food that we give out, and I'll get into more about that in our history, but the food that we give out has the same value in terms of its nutritional component, how it's prepared, when it's packaged up, as food that we eat ourselves. Next slide, please. So that you understand like where OMP, where One More Plate came from, I started One More Plate on April 1st of 2020, and I did it really in response to COVID. And the reason was I was on my way, the doctor part is real. I am a tumor biologist, a cancer biologist at Georgetown. And so on my way to work, especially at the height of the pandemic, all I would see naturally were, those people who are homeless and unsheltered on the street. We naturally didn't see people walking on the streets, and businesses were boarded up. So it was very clear that the opportunity to get resources, if not giving food, to have money to then spend on food, that was going to be few and far between, and much less than, pre-COVID. And like I said, I was a postdoc at the time, so I did not have the funds to go at this and spend a bunch of money on food to package up. So I thought of it this way. I like to think that I do pretty well in cooking. So I decided that the food that I make, and honestly, I'm decently fit, so it has a decent nutritional value. And like I said, I think I'm decent at cooking, at least. So I decided that the chicken and waffles that I made on April 1st would be what I took out the next day. I let social media know that's kind of the initiative that I was going with. And we asked people that because people were home more, at home more and cooking more, instead of allowing for more waste, we asked that people, instead of doing those things, that you would set aside one more plate right when you make your food, and then we would pick it up and distribute it to someone who is less fortunate. So that's really where the name came from. And it speaks to the space that anyone at home can really be a pivotal part of helping someone else. Next slide. And that right there. So it's really three parts, so 3 steps to our pipeline. And this will most certainly speak to what we're calling our food network, and you'll see how it extends. So the first is food intake. And the reason for that is that we know that there is a lot of food that can be used, but it's kind of chucked out if it's closest to its expiration date. The other part is, like I said, we built this model intending that we would not and could not, like I said, out of my own pocket, spend an excess of money to get the food in. So the first step is food intake. And so what you see is on the top left, those are bagels that are donated from Call Your Mother Deli, that's in DC. On the top right are, I think that is spinach that day. Spinach, and actually this one here and the bottom left were all things that we were tipped off from Food Rescue from Kate. So that partnership, that partnership allows for us to have food intake of food. And then we also partner with a church that allows us to work with the food bank. The next slide, please. The second part is meal production. Like I said, we take those raw foodstuffs and we produce meals out of them. There are a couple of teams right now, but out of DC, we function out of this commercial kitchen called Tastemakers, but that allows us for the production of food. Next slide, please. And then last, and honestly most important, is getting the meals out to the streets. So our bullseye population are those who are homeless and unsheltered, meaning that we will find them in tent encampments or just along the street, wherever they happen to be. We rely on volunteers to do that, and anything that we don't take out on our service route, meaning we don't give it out there, we have partnerships with the homeless shelters, so that way we can give the food to them, but so that way we're not being a part of the food waste problem. So it's 3 steps, but the distribution is where it culminates. And last step, please, last slide, please. And to get in contact with us, that is how you would do it. One More Plate, everything is just One More Plate, or everything is Dr. Renaissance. It's pretty easy to find. And I can take questions now if it's appropriate.
Dr. Renaissance, thanks so much. I do want to encourage folks to use the chat to ask questions, but before we shift to Sydney, I wondered if you just wanted to speak about all the places that you work in the region and some of your future
absolutely.
plans.
Thank you for that. So we started in DC, where formed the 2nd team in Baltimore, Maryland, a 3rd team in Prince George's County, Maryland, Team 4 in Hartford, Connecticut, and it's looking like Team 5 in the Bronx and Team 6 in Atlanta, Georgia. So we are kind of in an expansion moment right now. I'm actually in London right now, working on like the seeds of a team here, rather.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to the questions for you and our informal hangout with your colleagues at the end of this call.
Yeah, me too.
Great, thank you. So shifting to Sydney Daigle with Prince George's County Food Rescue. I think they may be our newest food rescue organization with us today. Sydney, are you ready?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lindsay. I'm really excited to be joining the DMV Food Recovery Week. I'm really excited about the other panelists that are joining me. I have to touch base with you, Dr. Renaissance, and see how we can collaborate. I'm Sydney. I work at the Institute for Public Health Innovation. And for the past 8 years or so, we've coordinated the Prince George's County Food Equity Council, which is a local food policy council for Prince George's County, Maryland. So as a food policy council, can you go to the next slide, please, Evelyn? We've spent the last 8 years since our launch really focused on building relationships with stakeholders across the food system, whether those are urban farmers, grocers, government agencies, composters, residents who care about their food, or really anyone in between. And though we've focused on primarily policy change pre-COVID and systems change, everything from urban farming to healthy kids meal bills, whenever the pandemic hit, we found ourselves really well positioned to lead our county's food assistance response. So we were able to step in and immediately stand up a network of food assistance providers to serve our county residents. So our network and kind of our work with the food pantries across the county really focused on providing support to providers who were on the ground in communities struggling to get food out in really unprecedented and very challenging situations, and really seeing how we could focus their efforts and their resources on parts of the county where residents were underserved and just not seeing the level of support that they needed. So one of the things that became immediately noticeable during the pandemic was that we did not have a coordinated food recovery network in the county. That resulted in very large donations from county vendors leaving the county to go to other counties with stronger networks to provide food to residents in need. Some of that food did come back to the county, but it had been kind of shipped up to Montgomery and then sort of slowly trickled back down to Prince George's. So we knew there needed to be a stronger system in place. We also had a really hard time coordinating direct to resident delivery of food boxes. So that meant that a lot of our most vulnerable residents, those who were quarantined, seniors, folks who just didn't feel safe or comfortable leaving their homes during the pandemic, were left underserved. So where we were able, we tried to coordinate deliveries of food to pantries. This really increased in both scale and complexity as the pandemic stretched on. Whenever it first started, I would get calls from residents. One man had bought 20 frozen turkeys at his local supermarket, wanted to find a home for them, found a home for those frozen turkeys, but then a few months later, our team was being asked, and we're able to fundraise, coordinate the purchase, transportation, repackaging, and distribution of 2,000 pounds of turkey for residents from a farmer down in Southern Virginia. So that just kind of gives you a sense of how things evolved during the course of the pandemic. And it became very clear that we needed a stronger coordinating system, which is when we were connected with Food Rescue US through Kate with DC Food Rescue. And we were able to launch this summer with support from the Philip L. Graham Foundation, Washington Gas, and Prince George's County Council through a non-departmental grant. Next slide, Evelyn. So this is how our program works. We are powered through Food Rescue US technology. And whenever a donor, whether it's a restaurant, grocery store, farm, what have you, has food that they want to move, they contact our staff and we help coordinate a donation to a food pantry in our county. We use the Food Rescue US software to find a volunteer, and that volunteer is assigned a time to go pick up the food from the donor, and they transport the food with their car, bike, whatever access to transportation they have to a food pantry close by to that donor site. So we are really interested in getting more donors and volunteers into our system currently. We are pretty well set on the food provider side of things, so we'd love to hear from you if you're serving residents in the county and are looking to get more food, but there's certainly a lot of demand. And in our end, we're really focused right now on increasing our supply side of things. Next, so please, if you would, and you're interested, sign up through that bit.ly link, and we'll drop that in the chat momentarily as well. So we launched very, very recently, as Lindsay mentioned. I think we're the newest to this crew, if you will. But I did want to highlight a couple of successes and challenges that we've had so far. So as I mentioned, we do have a really robust network of food pantries from across the county. And that's allowed us to quickly home any donations that we receive, kind of regardless of how last minute they are, because we have this really strong, trusting relationship with a lot of our providers. And through the pandemic, we learned a lot about their operations. So we know who has a refrigerated truck. We know who has access to cold storage. We know who has a distribution on Saturday versus Tuesday. And that's helped us place food that is relevant for the provider site on short notice. But the resources I mentioned are really in short supply. So one of the most successes and challenges that we've had so far is that we have some farmers who are interested in donating produce. We recently had Turp Farm at the University of Maryland provide a large donation of perishable produce, which is incredible. We were able to home it with one of our providers, the Fountain Community Enrichment, a food pantry, because they have a refrigerated truck. So that was great that they could pick it up, but that's not the case for many of our providers. And we really found that missing food distribution, kind of refrigerated infrastructure piece is a huge hole for us in our food recovery network that frankly, we will not be able to expand to a level that's needed until we can fill that gap. So that's one thing I'd like to highlight, and I hope that there's folks on the call that we can partner with to help to kind of address that challenge. But very happy to be here and happy to share space with panelists today.
Thank you so much, Sydney, and thank you so much again to Aman and to Dr. Renaissance as well. I see that Julia has put that link in the chat that you mentioned to us, Sydney, for folks who want to get involved in Prince George's County. And I want to thank all of our upcoming panelists as well as our participants for your patience. We know we're cramming an awful lot into an hour. But before we turn it over to Evelyn, Dr. Renaissance, just wanted to highlight a question for you in the chat, which I think we could discuss later if you want to unmute or if you feel comfortable responding in the chat too. But Joe, mentioning DC's most recent strategy around some of the encampments and tent cities that we're seeing for our unhoused residents, and how you might be thinking about your response in the future. So with that, just want to check on one logistical item. Evelyn, do you want to continue sharing slides and I'll do the time monitoring?
Absolutely, thank you. I was going to suggest the same.
Okay, thanks so much, Evelyn. Turning it over to you.
Great, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Evelyn Kelly. I'm with the Institute for Public Health Innovation. Really excited to be joining for the first time in the 2021 Food Recovery Week. And we're going to continue with our second panel. We have 3 organizations that are going to highlight their respective food recovery efforts, as well as share ways that you all can get involved. And then we'll conclude with also just talking about the future of food recovery. So where do we see things going from here? So our first speaker is Kate Urbank. She is the DC Site Director of Food Rescue US. And Kate, I will pass it to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to join this group, and it's exciting to hear from Sydney about the progress that's being made at the Food Rescue US fueled location in Prince George's County. So we can advance to the next slide. Those are our beautiful food rescuers from the DuPont market who are there every Sunday, which is very exciting. So you've heard a little bit about the Food Rescue US model. It's a proprietary app, so we are able to retool it as needed. It's kind of a constant changing motion to kind of perfect it, which is, a good deal of our budget goes to making sure that our software program works well. Basically, as we all understand here, the food rescue model is to make sure we reduce waste by getting edible surplus food donated forward to agencies that assist the food insecure. And in this case, it is all driven by our amazing group of volunteers who use their cars. And I do have one who uses a volunteer, it's called our rescue wagon. So we do have a couple people who use wagons and bicycles, but for the most part, it is cars. We try to keep our footprint a little as small as possible, but indeed the carbon footprint, but we are out there getting food from here to there toward the goal. Next slide, please. So about a year ago, we went to version 3 of our app or software. It was a bit of a bump to get everybody over to the next level, but it has a lot of really great bells and whistles that keep us on track here. So this is just a little bit of a capture of what the technology looks like. Our login screen, every evening at 6 o'clock, an email goes out to our registered food rescuers suggesting which rescues are unclaimed for the next day. We don't really do push notifications other than that one email that goes out in the evening and hopefully captures people's attention, because I'm very happy to see my phone blow up a little bit between 6 and 6:30 when people start to claim any remaining rescues that might not be claimed. Food rescuers have things that come up at the last minute, so we have an opportunity for people to say they can't make it, and quickly that rescue becomes available to others, and I get a trigger so I can be on the lookout to get that claimed as well. And then we are able to consider the amount of food rescued by how people close out the rescue details through closing rescues. So that is the technology in a nutshell. And you can go to the next slide. We are celebrating 5 years, which is kind of exciting. So we put together a little slide suggesting that. And in fact, that is me on the first picture there, because I was a volunteer for the food rescue program in Connecticut, where it was founded years ago. And when I moved back to DC, I thought, well, let me pitch in and do food rescue for whatever group is on the ground. And we kind of found out that there was no such similar program. Montgomery County had a great program going, of course. So Food Rescue US DC was launched. Over the course of the past 5 years, we've grown and continue to register new partners and food donors. And we're up to like 1,600 registered volunteers, of course, not all of whom have done a rescue, but we are always looking to keep people busy and replenish those volunteers who move away or move on to other volunteer opportunities. So far it's been a pretty good balance between rescues that are available and individuals who are there to claim for us. So I think one of the things that I don't know if I talk about this now, Evelyn, we were kind of asked to consider the diversity, the ways that we are working with a diverse group out in the community. And I wanted to highlight the fact that one of the things that has been really beneficial to our program is our getting to know organizations such as One More Plate and so many of the mutual aid organizations that became so active during COVID. It was a whole new way to kind of have neighbors helping neighbors, because our model is a business donating to a nonprofit. So that's a pretty basic. It's pretty strict. We don't go to the end user. Using the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act, we apply a donor and donating to a nonprofit as the liability protection that we seek within our organization. So I'm always happy when I can partner with another nonprofit that is able to go out into the community with the food that we're able to recover for them. So it's been just a whirlwind of meeting new organizations and getting them registered and partnering with them so that we can be sure that we are meeting the diverse needs across the community. We partner with synagogues, with mosques, with churches. We have a lot of low-income housing that we work with, which has been another bit of a change. No longer is it just the typical Google to see where the food pantries, soup kitchens, et cetera. We kind of go deeper into the community. The more I know about where the need is, the more I'm able to go there with the donations that we're receiving. I also have an advisory council that about the past 2.5 years, and we have a lot of diversity within that council, people who represent different walks of life and different ways of approaching our mission. So that's been a wonderful, as I run this program by myself down here. We have staff up in Connecticut running the national program, but it is me and the volunteer base that we've developed here that really get everything going day to day. So it's great to have that advisory council on my team as well. Operational challenges, another thing that we were asked to discuss. I will say as a favor to a gentleman who I met who, 2 minutes, okay. I was, the Bartenders Guild did a day of service for us doing food rescues across the board. And that was kind of a fun thing to have them out there getting that done. And one of the gentlemen got married this past weekend. So I don't usually do a food rescue at 10 o'clock at night, but off the books, I did this for him because, you know, I wanted to say yes, but it strikes me as an example of the Food Rescue US model that we have, which has no storage. It's direct delivery from a donor to a location. I was able to contact the new chef at the Central Union Mission and say, this is unusual, but might we drop off food at 10:15 p.m. because we have this wedding? And he approved it. And it was a great opportunity, but it's certainly not our model. And it's something that I think we should all be thinking about, is all these missed opportunities of late night catering and making sure we're able to glean as much food as we can. The one other thing I kind of referred to earlier that is an operational challenge for me is that I need to make sure that I'm working with nonprofit organizations in order to keep that chain of the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act intact. So I find kind of creative ways to work with some of the agencies or groups that are not typically registered as a nonprofit. We see how we can try to partner together, but it's something that I have to kind of think through and work on for a solution. So that's just another thing I flag and wonder if other food rescue programs have had similar issues or questions about that. And I probably have eaten up my extra 2 minutes. We good? I think that's Food Rescue USDC. That's my presentation. And that's how you reach me. And I would love, oh yeah, we need volunteers all the time. We need, we work in Northern Virginia and DC. I don't think I mentioned that as well. So we encourage volunteers from all around, but the bulk of our rescues are DC and Northern Virginia, in respect to the other organizations that are out there doing great work as well.
All right, thank you, Kate. I've been keeping an eye on the chat as well and see some questions have been already answered. There was one remaining about piloting electric vehicles. Kate, has that come up for you in terms of possibilities?
Electric vehicles, wow, that would be great. I once had a guy who had like a tricycle with a container in the back that he was driving our food around, but I do worry. I mean, I have had volunteers who've had a struggle getting past the idea of hopping in their car to move food from place to place because of their increased carbon footprint. So I do wish, and I have a lot of people who say they have bicycles and could they possibly do bike rescues. So it is something that I'm trying to figure out, but the bottom line is we just have to move the food.
All right, well, perhaps next year, 3.0. We keep growing and advancing with new opportunities and hopefully new partners as well.
Yeah.
So let's move on to our next speaker. We have Cheryl Collin. She is a program director with Community Food Rescue, and they serve the Montgomery County, Maryland community. Cheryl?
Yes, hi. Thanks so much for having me, and so delighted to be back as part of this panel. As Lindsay mentioned, we had this panel last year with two of my colleagues, and it's really exciting to see how we're each growing in new ways and maturing as our organizations continue to help people in need. So again, I'm Cheryl Collin. I'm the program director at Community Food Rescue. Community Food Rescue is a program of Manna Food Center, which is Montgomery County's largest food bank, food center, and distribution center. And we have been up and running since 2015. So we've been active for 7 years. And Manna started Community Food Rescue to really connect diverse efforts of food recovery in Montgomery County. We knew that there were individual small efforts through churches or community centers to rescue and distribute food. So maybe they've had one relationship with a food donor business and have connected that. But what Community Food Rescue does is really connect everybody together in a coordinated network. And I'm so pleased to share that in these 7 years that we've been active, we've built a network of almost 1,000 network members, which includes food donor businesses of all kinds, food recipient organizations that provide food assistance to people who are food insecure, and a very robust volunteer food runner core of folks. We've been able to rescue and distribute 7.3 million pounds of food, which is about the equivalent of 6.1 million meals. Next slide. Kate mentioned the proprietary app that Food Rescue US uses. We use a different proprietary app. It's called Chow Match, developed by a company in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we like to refer to it as kind of the Lyft of food recovery. Similar to what Kate described, our software is quite robust. It matches food donor businesses with food recipient organizations and then sends out alerts to our network of volunteer food runners. And the first volunteer to pick that up gets it. All three parties get notification and the food run happens. I, as an administrator, watch behind the scenes to make sure that Chow Match is matching appropriately to the different organizations, and I can always override or intervene or change a food run as it goes. But it all happens in real time. It all happens 24/7. Doesn't matter if it's the weekend, evening, or holidays. Food runs can happen anytime. I wanted to mention that over the years, we've expanded the sources of food that would otherwise go to waste. Some of the projects that we've worked on are on-farm gleaning, cooking with recovered food. And when COVID hit, we were able to leverage the Community Food Rescue operations and to expand really beyond recovered food, and recognizing that Manna had a need and a desire to make home deliveries of Manna's food for families. So this is not recovered food, this is purchased food, but recognizing that during COVID, there were people that should not be going out to a distribution site or to Manna's warehouse to pick up food. And so thanks to our volunteers and using the power of Chow Match for matching, we were able to do home deliveries. What I want to focus on actually my time today is talking about a new project that we are implementing that is Manna's Farm to Food Bank program. Next slide, please. So The Farm to Food Bank program is a collaboration between Manna Food Center, the Montgomery County Food Council, and the Montgomery County Office of Agriculture. And thanks to funding through Montgomery County and through the Community Foundation of Greater Washington, Manna purchases fresh harvested produce, meat and eggs from local farmers, and then donates it and delivers it through our CFR network to food assistance organizations. And what's really exciting is to see the growth of this program over the last 3 years. So you can see pre-COVID, Manna was working with 4 farms. In 2020, that grew to 18 farms, distributing 18,000 pounds of food. And this year, so far, we are so happy to be working with 32 farms in Montgomery County, and so far have distributed about 60,000 pounds of food. So we've got these great metrics to celebrate, but even more exciting than the overall weight of the food is really just to see the farmers' participation and the farmer engagement. So with their growing of local food, I want to mention that we've been able to purchase 53 types of produce, meat, grains, and eggs, and that this food has been distributed to 33 nonprofit food assistance providers within our network, and of course, transported by volunteer food runners. Among the farmers, we're really so pleased to be working with some beginning farmers, some women farmers, and also farmers who've been growing culturally diverse crops from their native countries. And then on the recipient side, I just want to give a shout out to Aman again, who presented earlier from the Guru Gobind Singh Foundation, who's been one of the recipient organizations who takes this local fresh produce and then turns it into those amazing vegetarian meals for distribution. Next slide, please. I just wanted to mention that we surveyed farmers recently and asked them about their participation in the program. And I'm going to just read a quote from one farmer. This is Tanya from Passion to Seed Gardening. And she talks about how the County Farm to Food Bank program supports the environment. She says, quote, "This program is the best of both worlds. Not only does the farmer get paid and the recipients get locally grown produce, but this program reduces farm produce waste that would have decayed or decomposed in the field. And this program helps to bridge the gap in some communities that are not able to afford good quality fresh produce," end quote. So really just to sum up this program, we're so excited to have the County Farm to Food Bank program. And we're both providing additional capacity for local farmers, and we're making these benefits of their locally grown products available to all Montgomery County residents. We see that these investments will lead to a post-pandemic food system that's more resilient to future disasters, better for farmers, better for consumers, better for the environment, and to ensure food security for all Montgomery County in years to come. Back to you, Evelyn.
All right, thank you, Cheryl. I'm going to move on to our final speaker this afternoon, and that is Aaron Tolson. He is the CEO of the Northern Virginia Food Rescue. And
hey,
Aaron,
Evelyn.
that's to you.
Yep, thank you so much. And hello to everybody that's here with us today and fellow panelists. We do a lot of work together, so it's always good to reconnect in these meetings and get, in some ways get caught up on what everybody's doing. So this is our information. Northern Virginia Food Rescue has been operating in Prince William County for 2 years. We actually started out as Prince William Food Rescue, a program of another nonprofit called ACTS, Action and Community Through Service, that have been serving Prince William County for over 50 years and now expanding. So if you can go to the next slide, we use different technology, which was developed by 412 Food Rescue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They've been using their technology for about 6 years and continuing to do development updates, etc. Their technology is also kind of springing up in cities around the United States. We're currently the only county using their technology, and looking forward to expanding into other counties in Northern Virginia. So we have a new app that will be coming out soon in the next couple of weeks. That will be Northern Virginia Food Rescue. It'll be a multi-county app so that volunteers can select which county they want to receive notifications in as they're doing rescues. So like the others, we operate very similarly. We're looking to fill that space between food waste and food insecurity. And how do we move that food that's, instead of it going to a landfill, how do we get it to food pantries, food banks, community centers, boys and girls clubs, whoever that can actually feed people in need. And so with our app, we actually build the rescues out individually. So we have staff that coordinate between the food donor and the food distribution sites. But like the others, it needs to be where it goes directly from the donor to the food bank so they can immediately feed people. And most of the food pantries, they don't have a lot of cold storage. I know others have talked about that already, or storage in general. And they also, some of the stuff we get from the grocery stores, the shelf life might be, not very long. So it has to really get to a family soon. So we try to manage those relationships on both the food donor and distribution side to ensure that food gets there quickly and can immediately go out to families. So we're able to monitor every rescue that's claimed and kind of watch it as it goes from being claimed, they're on their way, they picked it up, what they picked up, they're dropping it off, they finish the rescue to kind of ensure that that whole life cycle of food rescue is completed. And Cheryl mentioned CFR as the Lyft of food rescue. So that makes us the Uber of food rescue. So we're all doing the same thing. We're mobilizing volunteers using technology to help reduce food waste and reduce food insecurity, and then ultimately reducing greenhouse gas emissions because that food's not rotting in a landfill. So in the past 2 years, we now have over 70 distribution sites throughout Prince William County. We have over 2,500 profiles in our app. We have over 500 active volunteers that have completed over 21,000 food rescues. We've rescued 2 million pounds of food just in Prince William County, and then redistributed another 15 million pounds of food through a warehouse we have in Manassas that is part of the Prince William County Emergency Management Office. We've been helping them respond to COVID. So like others have mentioned, obviously the pandemic, food insecurity went through the roof. And we needed a way to be able to get bulk food in and out. And that can't happen just going from a grocery store. So the county has worked with us, allowed us to work with the USDA's Farm and Food Box Program, Cavalier Food Bank and their food boxes, and be able to have a place to get bulk fresh produce and non-perishables and perishables and then get them out the door. We also were able to use our app we've done over 4,000 direct deliveries to people's homes from food pantries. For those that were quarantined, had health issues, shut-ins, and we've got a little over 200 seniors that we deliver to from 2 different food pantries every month. We also, it's really cool is that we're also helping to reduce waste at our food pantries, because a lot of times we'll get donations of things that they have too much of, and then they're going to end up throwing it out anyway. So now they can just let us know, and we can redirect food from one food pantry to another food pantry who actually could use that food and get it out the door. So we're looking at ways we can reduce food waste across the entire distribution model. As I mentioned, we're expanding. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Kind of our goal is to have food rescue programs localized in each county throughout Northern Virginia. That will help us then have that real-time data of where the distribution sites are, but where the need is based on every week understanding where the needs are. But then also the flip side of that is we really want to leverage the wide range of local agriculture that we have here in Northern Virginia. We have lots of farms out in, Fauquier, Culpeper, Rappahannock area. There's community gardens and rooftop gardens and school gardens all throughout Fairfax. There's indoor agriculture that's popping up in various places. And so we want to leverage all of this produce, healthy food that's being grown, and make sure that it can actually get to food pantries for distribution. But we also know that there might be way more abundance in one county and a lot more need in another. So this will actually allow us to have a better idea of what food is where that food is and where it needs to get to. So we're really excited about kind of leveraging this regional model of individual food rescue programs to duplicate what we've done in Prince William, but also in other counties as well. And then like Cheryl, we've been piloting a farm to pantry model over the past summer as well, to really see how can we support our local farmers? How can we leverage grant funding and funds to purchase from them so to put food on their table while getting that healthy food into our system? And so the next slide, please. So we believe that in the next, by year 5, as we expand, that we could literally rescue over 22.5 million pounds of food in Northern Virginia after 5 years. And so that's 18.7 million meals and a reduction of over 12 million pounds of CO2. But like all of our organizations, it takes volunteers, it takes people willing to spend 45 minutes to claim a rescue and pick up food and drop it off. We can't do this on our own. We are looking for partners in our community that can help us do that. And then obviously one of the things that we're looking at too is, how do we kind of turn this into a revenue generating operation and not just relying on grants and foundations and all of us clawing after money to provide a service to organizations that get a tax credit and a benefit by donating that excess food. So there's just a lot of things that we're working on, and how do we leverage, policies and procedures for our state, local, and even national level. So thanks for the opportunity to be here and join these other fabulous panelists.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Before we open it up to our informal discussion, I do want to allow closing thoughts by all of the panelists. So one of the things I mentioned earlier that we really wanted to make sure that we touched upon was what does the future of food recovery look like? Just hearing some thoughts from last year to this year, there's been some advancements, but as we move forward in the next couple of years, where do you see food recovery efforts? So I will start maybe from the first for our first panelist, Aman. Maybe we can go in order, or just feel free to share your thoughts, but just wanted to make sure that we touched upon that point.
Thanks for putting me on the spot, Evelyn. My parting thoughts firstly would be for everyone to get engaged, volunteer, donate in whatever way you can. So for me personally, having been in Montgomery County since 2015, I'll be honest, I was in this bubble because my son was at the Churchill High School. So during the past 2 years, having been on the ground and been doing this food rescue for almost 18 months, it's really opened my eyes to the need within our community. Instead of just assuming that we're in a wealthy part of the world, everyone is taken care of, and that is far from the truth. So for me personally, I've kind of made it my personal goal, in partnership with my local place of worship, Guru Gobind Singh Foundation, is to somehow have a kitchen which is available with freshly prepared meals 24/7. So those they have a place to come and go to, and my hope is for us to pilot this, and then for other organizations with a licensed kitchen to follow pursuit. So I always say, if you don't share your dreams, you can't make them possible. So that's the direction I'm heading in. And also I know here in Montgomery County, the kids in schools all have access to free meal during the day. So this is something I would like to see continued throughout the country if possible, because it is a basic human need and everyone has a right to a simple meal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mon. You did great for on the spot. All right, we'll move to our next speaker, Dr. Renaissance.
All right. Where I'd actually like to see the future head to is a bit more synergy within the individual groups and individuals who are looking to do the work. So I mentioned previously an expansion to the Bronx, and that's not with an organization, that's with a group of mothers who are at this point doing sandwiches and spending their own money. So I think if we were intentional about linking with people who are already doing the work, we would see more of the work get done. And that's where a lot of our initiative is going.
All right. Thank you, Sydney.
Yeah, maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but I would like to see less food recovery have to take place. So that's really where we want the future to be. The food recovery is kind of a last ditch effort, right? It's food that was overproduced and it's going to be wasted. We'd obviously like to reduce the amount of food that's going to be wasted in the first place in our food system. And then on the recipient side, for us, the ideal is that folks have the resources to buy the food that they want when they want it, on their terms. So we are trying to make sure that our food recovery network is it provides food in as a dignified manner as possible, but really what we want to see is better and more robust economic security for our residents across the county. So not too many people are relying on food distributions.
All right. Thank you, Sydney. Kate?
Yeah, Sydney kind of took my lines there. I struggle with the concept that food rescue is going to solve hunger. And every time I hear people say that, I get a little claw, because I just feel as though there's so many underlying reasons why people are in poverty. And I'm really thrilled that this is the work that I'm able to do now and that our volunteers and all of us on this call are doing. It's critical for the environment and for just principle to not waste food. But I just don't ever want us to lose sight of the fact that this is, this is not going to cure hunger. It's going to address hunger, but there are many, many policies that are standing in the way of people being able to enjoy living in a world where they can access food without anxiety.
All right. Thank you, Kate. Cheryl?
Yes, I concur with what Kate and others have said, also about how food recovery is not going to cure hunger. What I wanted to share, though, is some really interesting legislation that I think is going to have a huge impact in Maryland. It's the Maryland Food Residuals Act, and it was passed into law on May 30th of this year. And starting January 1st in 2023, the bill targets large food waste generators that generates 2 tons of food scraps per week. And they are required to deal with food scraps in other ways, including donating food as well as composting. So these large food waste generators could be supermarkets, hotels, universities, food processing facilities, and distribution warehouses. So we think that this has a huge motivational impact that will affect any food that could potentially go to waste be redirected to food recovery efforts. We're really excited about that. We're starting to work with the county on what that might look like in terms of implementation and how that might expand food recovery efforts. We've seen that happen in other states, and a lot of food recovery efforts, say in California, have really blossomed as a result of legislation like this passing. So really excited about that.
All right. Thank you, Cheryl. And Aaron?
Yeah, so to piggyback off on my friends here, so a quote that I heard not too long ago is that hunger is just one room in the house of poverty, and that there's definitely other underlying issues. This is just one room, and it happens to be the room that we on this panel are focused on. So there's a lot of need, and yes, food rescue is not gonna solve the need of that one room, much less the whole house. But working together, hopefully we can make a dent and allow people to be respected and valued and taken care of here in our country. My hope is that, like Cheryl said, that Virginia will be adopting some of those policies like California, Vermont, New York, now Maryland, where they're really intentionally making efforts to reduce waste reduction. I know there's the 2030 plan, but there's not a whole lot of meat on those bones. And I'd like to see more of that, specifically in the state of Virginia, because that's where I am. But ultimately, I think our goal is, as a food rescue organization, is at the end of the day, we want to see a more healthy society. People in need often don't have healthy food options. And so if we can provide that to them, that impacts their overall health, and the trickle down of that with our health system fighting diabetes, the money spent on that, et cetera, could really go a long ways to other areas or other rooms of the house that need to be addressed. So whether it's providing better food options, better education, encouraging more awareness and opportunities for SNAP and WIC and other benefits that are out there for our food insecure population. We just want to be part of that process. And I think all of us on this panel want to be able to do the same thing.
Thank you, Erin. Really like that quote. Well, thank you again to all of our panelists. I will pass it now to Lindsay, if you'd like to open up the informal discussion component of our panel today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Evelyn, and thank you again to everyone who's joined us today. We've had some great contributions in the chat and certainly appreciate that. Also want to thank all of our panelists who are joining us from near and far. So we decided just to have kind of an informal hangout time for the panelists to talk to each other, for you to talk with them informally. I am going to stop the recording, which will be available later. But we just wanted to make this time to try to make some further connections and learn from the expertise that we know that everyone on this call has. So thank you again.